I grew up in a family of lawyers. Not coincidentally, all of us do different things. I went through law school and I'm glad I went through it to understand what I did not want to do. I worked as a journalist, and that did already start opening me up to the idea that there is a certain type of issue that gets my heart. Courtroom left me dissatisfied at some level, and I couldn't really pinpoint what it was. I was very, very disillusioned in terms of what the courts can offer. Law is a lot of intense reading. That's a lot for a person who doesn't read. You need to be okay with yourself. Like, you need to be okay with loneliness. Because a lot of time is spent on your own, reading, trying to figure things out. You need to be a very mentally strong person. You should work when you are in college. Pick the smaller law firm, pick the smaller place, because that's where you'll get more responsibility, because they need you. Law does a lot to your personality. It makes you stronger, it makes you confident, it gives you power to take on the world. There's a lot of opportunity if you want to stick to law, but even if you don't want to stick to it, this piece of knowledge doesn't really go waste.
Hello and welcome to Discover You Career Journeys. We're so happy to have Dr. Kalindi Kokal with us today. Kalindi grew up in Pune and was the first person in her family to step in the development sector. A choice that already says something about the kind of path that she was willing to carve for herself. Thoughtful, unconventional, and deeply rooted in curiosity, her journey has never been about simply following the expected route. She began with law, graduating from ILS Law College in Pune before going on to practice at the Bombay High Court. But somewhere along the way, Kalindi realized that her questions about law extended far beyond the courtroom. She wanted to understand how people actually experience justice in their everyday lives. The curiosity took her across the world to Queen Mary College, University of London for her LLM, and later to Germany, where she received a doctoral fellowship at the Max Planck Institute for Social Anthropology, one of the world's leading research institutions. There she studied how rural communities in India navigate law, conflict, and dispute resolution in practice and not just in theory. Her research eventually became a published book with Routledge. After returning to India, Kalindi spent 3 years as a postdoctoral fellow at IIT Bombay, followed by a quieter and deep intentional chapter volunteering with a community organization in the hills of Kumaon. Today, she is a senior research analyst at the Kotak School of Sustainability, IIT Kanpur, exploring the links between law, society, and policy. Kalindi is also the founder of The Intersection, an initiative that helps people navigate complex decisions with greater clarity and confidence. Inspired by years of research into how people make sense of conflict and difficult choices, her work brings together analytic depth and practical, grounded support. This conversation about law is about law as a career, not just the traditional paths people hear about, but the many unexpected directions it can lead you towards when you allow curiosity to guide you. Kalindi, thank you so much for being here. It's a real pleasure to have you on Discover You Career Journeys. Now, you're a researcher, a published author, a former lawyer, a visiting fellow in Germany, and someone who has spent time living in rural communities doing fieldwork. That's a fascinating collection of lives. So let me start right there. Now, what does your world look like right now? And when people ask you, what do you do professionally, what do you actually say?
It's a very difficult question, but yeah, the easiest answer is to say I'm a lawyer. If it's an audience that understands social science, I'll say I'm a social scientist. But it's usually either of the two. But yes, I do spend a lot of time working with nonprofit organizations in a legal capacity. So I help with on ground work, and so my legal disciplinary background has never really left me.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's I'm usually either a lawyer or a social scientist,
Okay.
depending on the audience.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. All right. So let's go back to the beginning. Now, what drew you to law in the first place? I mean, was it kind of a default choice or something else?
So I come from a family of lawyers.
Okay.
So this is the most unsurprising, unexciting story to my choice of the career. But I grew up in a family of lawyers. Not coincidentally, all of us do different things.
Okay.
So I think I went through law school, and I'm glad I went through it to understand what I did not want to do. So the choice for law was really about trying to be like the rest of the family. But when I did actually step into law school, I realized that there were things that I was ready to take on, and there were things that were just not cut out for me. I think the beginning of everything was to try everything. So I have done litigation for 3 years. I've practiced in the Bombay High Court, which was also my family's dream for me that I should join the cult. And then I went on to do my master's because courtroom left me dissatisfied at some level and I couldn't really pinpoint what it was. So I went on to do an LLM. So all through law school, however, I worked as a journalist with the Indian Express and the Herald. One was a national newspaper, one was a local newspaper. And that did already start opening me up to the idea that there is a certain type of issue that gets my heart, and that's the issue of social justice, human rights, people from vulnerable backgrounds. So I want to tell their stories. I want to tell stories that you are not likely to come across all the time. It's not an Ambani or a Adani where, they're all over the papers, but these are stories that are more hidden out. And so that was already sort of part of my rooted interests. And by the time I finished law school and I went to practice in a very lovely law firm, I had great mentors. It didn't quite catch my beat basically. So I went on to do a master's and yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. I think that's a good starting point because I know you studied at ILS Law College in
Yes.
Pune. Now,
Yes.
what was that experience actually like on the ground?
With ILS?
Yes.
So the truth is, I did try for the NLS, the National Law School. That was that time the only law school, one of the only national law schools. And then Calcutta was just about coming up. So now we have more than 10. But then it was only NLS Bangalore. And they had an entrance exam, which I did not clear after 2 attempts. So ILS was really a choice by default because it was in the same city that I grew up in. My parents were not very keen for me to leave Pune unless I made it to the West. So, NLS didn't happen. And when I look back, I don't know whether it's good or bad because I have had opportunities to collaborate with professors from there now, and that's a real pleasure. So I know that I didn't pass out from there, but I know that I could partner with them now and I can do so many more things with them now. And although I was not a student, but ILS was a very, very grounding. It was a regular law school with 3-hour law classes. So that was it. I used to go at 7 in the morning. Well, not 3, a little more. And I used to be done at 11. And many of my colleagues were working. Either they were practicing with another lawyer or they were doing something. And I also started working right away. So already in my first year, second semester, I was, starting to intern with a magazine, a quarterly magazine. So you had the whole day. And so in that sense, it was really grounding. It was a regular college where I didn't pay a very high fee. It's a state, so it's partly aided. And so we have a very diverse set of students coming there. And not everybody, like I'm looking at it now obviously retrospective. So it's not a very privileged law school where everybody is from very rich homes or something. So that really opens your eyes up to so many things. It opens your eyes up to student unions. It opens your eyes up to the different types of cultural activities. There was a lot of theater in college. I didn't partake actively in everything, but I knew that all this existed and it could exist because it was a very sort of local Pune based college. At the time, it was quite high in the ranks. They did have issues like, I mean, this, what do we call it? Attendance thing had just started coming in. So they started making it compulsory. But it was, I think what I'm glad for it is that it really exposed me to a lot of people, variety of people who are doing different things and who are doing law for different reasons. So many of them are still my colleagues. I refer cases to them, so it's a nice feeling. And nobody really came because they wanted to go abroad to study, or that was, I don't even remember if that was a discussion we ever had. So I think that was really like, why do you want to do law? Somebody wants to do corporate law, somebody wants to do litigation, somebody wants to, I mean, I did have colleagues, but even then, who were very sure that, oh, we want to, get into human rights. We had seniors who are, Oishik Sarkar is a very senior activist today. He was our senior. Kranti. So, so many people who you saw living a different life of law. And I think this was all brought together on a singular platform. It was
Yeah.
college. There wasn't very fancy. It was very basic. We didn't have any, I mean, I had a couple of teachers who I still am in touch with, but it wasn't like some stalwart education where you're going, yeah, it was very simple.
Yeah.
And I think that is in the back of my head today. I still value that.
Well, that's important that you even brought it up, because that's pretty much the next question that, what do you think most that students and their parents kind of go wrong or misunderstand about law as a career even before they start? And, just to kind of move here on, people who kind of reach out to me and they ask me and they say, oh, law is this very, we're driving in a fancy car and we're getting into court. And I think that's probably because of a lot of television shows that have come out, and it's this normal modern kind of way of looking at law. But people is
Yeah.
so important, and mixing and working with
Yeah.
people. So what, in your opinion, is something that parents kind of misunderstand about law as a career before they even start?
So I think one of the things that has happened in the last decade and a half since I passed out of law school is we all have a lot more options now.
Yes.
And largely a lot of them are private options. So your finances really decide which law school you pick. It has become that. And it also then decides the social circle that you will move in when you go to a law school. I don't think it, and this is not for law, this is for any profession, that you can know what you want to do at 18. I see it
Absolutely.
now. I'm in academia and I feel that, you just need to do a course that's going to give you a lot of exposure. Because by the time you're 21, and even then, most of the times, many of us just want a job, right? Because we have not earned money, and there is that freedom in having your own money. And any profession, law, most of it, for a large part of it, does pay well. So most people will join the corporate law bandwagon and they will say, okay, we are getting a package of whatever, 1 lakh a month or whatever it is, much more also.
Yeah.
But I think, again, I see students go through that and then say, okay, I want this or I don't want this. And most people I know end up doing something different after 3 years of the corporate law. Very few are driven to say, I want to get on the top, because it has to really like burn you, right? Like you want to do this, you
yeah.
want to be top of, you want to be a partner in a law firm. It's also ultimately like running a business of sorts, right?
Correct.
But I think early on, yeah, parents feel that that's what's gonna get them. Like they're gonna go to law school, they're gonna get in a corporate job, they're gonna get a lot of money, and that's going to be it. But a lot of this is dictated by your surrounding circumstances and what really interests you. Because I don't think this generation is the one that wants to burn out. They're very clear in terms of, then most of them are financially, at least roti kapda matkan is take care of. So they have that clarity. They don't want to prove themselves by burning themselves out. They'd rather pick something that keeps them mentally healthy. And, so that's very nice. But I think parents, I mean, I speak to a few of them and they're like, well, they will do an MBA. And I'm like, wait a second, take a step back. Let your child go to law school and see what it is. Because law requires a lot of reading. And most people don't think, oh, my child argues very well, they'll do very well. No, law is a lot of intense reading. That's a lot for a person who doesn't read. It's a lot of analysis, a lot of research. It's a lot of sitting in closed rooms and doing your own thing. And I think it's also very frustrating because it's a lot of times to do with misery and less victories and more hearing people's issues. So you really have to be made up in that sort of a way to be okay with that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's great advice for someone who, like an early career of a lawyer in India, what it looks like, because there's a lot of reading. A lot of people come and say, no, they're great with arguing and, they have these really good debates. But I think that's interesting. The reading, the research, I think there's all of that.
There's a lot of that.
That comes in. Now, you practiced at the Bombay High Court. What was that experience like, especially in those, I feel those initial years when you were still finding your footing?
So actually after law school, so I already worked as a journalist and then I went off for 6 months to an organization in Uttarakhand called Avni. Because like I said before, I just wanted to do something to do with people, rural communities, or things like that. I worked there for 6 months, and what brought me back was I was very close to my grandmother, so I came back to Bombay to be with her. And that's where the rest of my family stays. And they were like, okay, you're back now, you're going to do law. So I said, yeah, sure. I mean, I was excited about it. And I was very clear again that I wanted to do litigation because I, again, wanted to be with people. And I had a very, very beautiful experience for 2.5 years. I worked at a very small law, then very small, now it's very big. And I had a fantastic mentor. He really sort of held my hand through those 2 years, gave me a lot of responsibility, which is unusual in a big law firm again. So, I happened to be in this firm. It was small. And so the scope for doing more work was there. If you're in a big law firm, you tend to get lost because there are obviously a lot of more people. And and I learned a lot and I really gave it my 100%. I think I really enjoyed working with Gaurav Shah. He's one of the partners there now. And he handheld me through 2.5 years. In court, the experience was very interesting. I met a lot of, so I was in a law firm. So my job was basically to do the research and to brief a counsel because that's how it works in the larger, like Bombay, Chennai, and all of these places. You have people who appear in court. So it's mostly you brief the counsel, the lawyer who will stand in court. They obviously make their own notes. They have their own thing going. So it's sort of a repetitive system. Now, when I look at it critically, like two people are doing the same thing. Yes, and you wait up for, the number to show up on board. Then you call the lawyer, he comes, things like that. So I met a lot of interesting senior lawyers in this time, senior counsel who are now senior counsels. Back then they were still not. I got to see what it is to stand in court. I got to argue one or two cases. When I say argue, it's not a hearing; it's just a little bit here and there. But it's exciting because, you feel, oh, everybody's listening to you. And then you have this person at the back who'll say, oh, go on, nobody cares. Everybody's doing their own thing. And you start realizing that, oh yeah, nobody really cares. You're arguing there. But this whole courtroom, which is pretty packed, nobody's really listening to what you're saying because they're all waiting for their turn. I had one interesting incident where Justice Chandrachud was on the dais and the lawyer didn't turn up. He was somewhere and then Justice Chandrachud said, okay, you argue the case. And at that moment, I realized why Gaurav sir said, always read the brief and go because you don't know who's going to be sitting there. And he said, you argue it. And I was like, sure, because I knew the matter. And there was a senior counsel opposite, it was a matter opposite the BMC. And I basically whatever, made my point, blah, blah, blah. And then Justice Chandra was the kind who wanted to push younger lawyers to take up the case, right? Like, do not just depend. And then he said, okay, I'm going to stay this. And then and then when I sat down, this old lawyer, poked me with his pencil and said, I'm so proud of you. You actually stood up to cause. So I think
Yeah.
these things really teach you a lot. In courtrooms, you start realizing that all sorts of people are coming. What is justice? I mean, one of the big things that moved me was this facade that the court offers justice. I think that broke in a big way for me. That was very, very disillusioned. That was, I think, why I could not practice beyond that. I mean, I have this incident where there was an old man who was waiting outside the court, and I was going into the court, and he was waiting, and then he stopped me and he said, in Marathi, he said, "Tumchakade phone ahe ka?" That time, not all of us had mobile phones. So I said, and I thought I used to give my phone in office because it's, yeah. So I said, no, what has happened? So he said, my number is being called out, like my name is being called out, but my lawyer is not here. And I was shaken. I was like, oh shit, what do I do? So I said, okay, I'll go in for you and I'll keep back the case. So I was like walking in for him, and that moment somebody I knew came, like one of the senior lawyers, and I said, listen, boss, can you just stand up for this guy because his lawyer's not come and he's desperate. And so he said, Tumcha wakilacha number, what is your lawyer's number? Give me. So that man, the lawyer, called the other guy and he was not there. He was just like, oh, just tell him to say something. Like, he was not even bothered about this. And for me, that was shattering. I was like, my God, this old man has come from very far away with some hope. And here is a lawyer who couldn't care. So I think there were many such incidences that I saw, which sort of started, I mean, they were strong, they had a stronger impact on me than the excitement of litigation. And yeah, I was very, very disillusioned in terms of what the courts can offer, what people come with, and what they go back with, and things like that. Yeah. So, yeah, you do need good lawyers, but like I said, you have to have the grit to be okay with all of this because this is every day.
Now, before law, there's something called a CLAT exam. There's a lot of conversation right now around CLAT and law entrance exams and kind of the pressure to get into the top NLUs and the whole coaching culture around it. Now, from where you sit, how much, I'm not really going to get into, the coaching part, but how much does the institution you graduate from actually matter in the long run over here?
I think it matters. It's a question that I get asked a lot, and I feel that if you're a very motivated person, if you're very ambitious, it doesn't matter which institution you come from. But if you're not so ambitious, if you're like, okay, I mean, there are people who want to have a job and then they want to do other things, right? Like they want to travel or whatever, learn cooking on the side or whatever their passions are. And so if the career is just one part of your story, then the institution matters because in India, the brand says a lot. Abroad also. I have done my postdoc with an IIT and I know why I wanted an IIT because it gives you access to just the name gives you access to a lot of things. It's the same with institutions of law. If you're from an NLS or a NALSAR or an NUJS, however good or bad they actually might be, the thappa, the stamp, opens gateways for you. But like I said, if you're very ambitious, if you are, very driven by what you do, then the institution doesn't matter. And that's my story because I didn't get into the institution I wanted, but I still, I think, didn't do badly. But I know that for friends of mine who did go to an NLS or an NALSAR, doors opened far more quickly for them. I mean, maybe it took me 8 years to get there. It took them 5 years or 4 years, like that, right? Because there is an environment, there is a mahol in these institutions which is preparing you for a bigger story. So if you're ordinary, obviously you don't get in. Also, that's also the sad. Like now, I don't know because the seats have increased. You have 300 seats per. Earlier it was just 80 seats in one NLS. Now it's 300 per national law school. So I think those things have changed. Again, all national law schools are not the same. So you have the top four, then you have the second tier. So I think institution matters, but it really matters if you just want to do law and get on with it. Like, you have other things you want to do, and that's fair. That's a fair sort of a thing.
Yeah. And internships, like I know that you have to do an internship
Yeah,
over
yeah.
there. How important are they really? And what
I
should.
think, yeah, sorry, go on.
Sorry. So, how important are they really? And what should law students actually be looking for? Because,
Yeah. So I am a big supporter of the fact that you should work
okay,
when you are
great.
in college. So whatever age that is, if your school allows you the time to work, you should work. Whether you make coffee at a law firm or you decide to actually get on ground and do something else, that's your decision. But
Yeah.
I think it is the only space in your life where you are treated as an adult and you are responsible for something. And you being the focus here, you are responsible for something. So if you don't turn up on time, they're not going to say, oh, let me call your mother. They're going to catch you, right? You can't give excuses like, oh, I couldn't, it was raining too much, so I didn't eat. If there's a meeting, there's a meeting. You figure out a reasonable excuse. So I
The
think
discipline kind of follows through
I think
over
it
here.
teaches you responsibility and it gives you clarity, because when you are actually held responsible for something, you realize what you want to be held responsible and what you don't. So it gives you clarity in terms of what is it that you are cut out for and what is it that you're not. And I think the earlier one gets this clarity, the better it is, the faster you are going to move after graduation. Otherwise it's just like you live in such a protected world, and as the world you live in more and more protected scenarios, so you don't realize that there is something out there that doesn't recognize you for your class or your religion or your gender, or it does, right? Like, where do these things matter? And I think that clarity, that sense of responsibility, that sense of knowing that this is for me and not for me comes only through work. So even if it's an internship, do it. I don't know where you'll do it, with who you'll do it. And I don't know whether where you do it makes so much of a difference. But of course, I'll always say pick the smaller law firm, pick the smaller place, because that's where you'll get more responsibility, because they need you.
Yes.
You're not just one more intern in there.
Correct.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mm.
Now, law is often seen as this prestigious, but also deeply, kind of an unequal profession where your background, sometimes your
Yeah.
connections, and even, I don't know how true this holds, but even English fluency can determine your entire trajectory. Okay.
Yeah.
How real is that in your experience over here?
So in my experience, see, I picked a path that I had strong skills, right? And I think that's what everybody has to do. I think that in the Pune District Court, for example, I can't stand and argue because I don't speak Marathi very well. I speak it. I speak enough to argue, but I can't write a petition in Marathi. And for the longest time, that's what you required. And I work in rural Maharashtra, so I know the drawback of not being able to present my work in Marathi, right? With those legal terms and whatever, all of that. And I always need to hold somebody's hand. So I always feel that, oh, you know law and Marathi, you have a lot of skill and strength. So I think it's about what your skill is and how you can use it to best help society and also make money at the same time. So if you're a smart lawyer, I mean, let's assume you're in litigation and your strength, you're good at what you do, but you don't know English, pick a smaller town. There's no harm in that. In fact, it's much better because you rise much faster to the top, right? So I think in the corporate law field, it's very different because it's dictated by a very international influence, right? Corporate law is for the big players in the sense of money. So you don't have small law firms small business companies doing amalgamations and mergers. They're rather working irregularly. But the big guys, so there, then it's like, okay, if you don't know English, if you're not suave or whatever that is, it's not that you won't get ahead, but you'll feel a bit left out. It takes longer to prove yourself. But like I said, if you pick law and litigation excites you, litigation has scope across the country, and it's actually really a need. Like, we need good lawyers on ground who are there to bring justice, who are there to fight the system and not just sort of get on with chalne do type of a thing. So, and this is missing in the smaller parts of India, the smaller towns where the local language is the strength of the person. So I would say that it's a slightly harder route, but it's definitely a more meaningful route and a more powerful.
Yeah. And more purpose here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I want to move here beyond the courtroom and dive into a choice that you stepped away from, which is law practice, and moved into research and academia.
Yeah.
Your journey definitely has already, you've shared much that this is something that's prompted you, but would you like to share a little bit more on what else prompted you to move into research and academia?
So I mean, research came much later in life. So I went and did my master's and I did it in human rights. And I again had very good teachers. I went abroad. I went to the University of London to do my master's. And I had two professors there who taught me. One didn't teach me at all, eventually became my PhD supervisor, and one who taught me. And what I enjoyed was their provocative work. They were questioning the system, they were pushing you to think critically. And again, I was in England, so the vulnerable or the minority group there was different, right, from India. And it was the professor who was teaching me minority rights who caught my attention again. So again, we were back in this familiar space of thinking against the mainstream, against the majoritarian sort of system there. And so he was quite an inspiration. And after that, I mean, for the record, that's Professor Prakash Shah. And he got me to sort of do my master's thesis in what is called the cultural defense. So basically, in England, can I say that my culture permits me to act in a particular way, which is why I acted in a particular way, but it goes against the legal system. So I did some. So, for example, in certain clans, the wife is kidnapped. It's a performative act, but she's kidnapped because that's a ritual. But then it comes under kidnapping, under British law. So, there are cases that happen like this. And then this person says, oh, but I did it because it's ritualistic. So is that a defense? So that was the question I asked in my master's thesis. And that really opened up, this research area where I was sitting down with books, trying to write. This was the first thing that I'd ever written as a research paper, which is very different from journalistic writing. And I wanted to work in England, but who eventually became my doctoral supervisor, Venna Mensky, he said, no, you don't have any scope in England, just go back to India. So I came back to India. And I got a job as a researcher. This was fairly coincidental on a research project here with an NGO. And there I again got the opportunity to work with senior academics because they were sort of guiding the research and we were on ground staff doing interviews, talking to people. So I think that is what really started interesting me. I realized that this is a space which allows me to sort of be myself. It allows me to interact with it also allows me to write, which I always enjoyed, still dealing with questions of law. So it really brought together a lot of my interests, and which is why I stuck to it. And then went on to do my PhD, which was the logical next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you do law and you become a lawyer. Now, that's just very in your head, right?
Yeah.
People think
Yeah.
that. Now, you've done multiple things with the degree in law, and then obviously went on to do various other your masters and your PhD. But what are the real viable alternatives? Can you maybe name some, or rather walk us through a range of paths you've actually seen people take besides research, academia, starting something and getting into this, like corporate law and,
Yeah, so now there is a lot. I mean, there are policy centers, so there's
Oh.
think tanks that you can join or start. Then there is a lot of now tech and law. So you have platforms
Yeah.
that are bridging the gap between tech and law. So you have Justice Adda, you have something called Agami, which I recently got to know about. You have so many other little, startups that are trying. So in Delhi also you have things where people working on surveillance and data, they need lawyers. So this now, how, in what capacity you enter them is very different, right? Like you may enter as a researcher, you may enter as a person who does advocacy, which is basically write the policy brief in a legal language, take it to the parliamentarian. It could be somebody who's just, there to inform people about the law. So to, all of these things, ultimately you have to have knowledge of the law. So that helps. So these are alternatives that have come up now. Law and tech is a big, big space. It's coming up in a big way. And people are doing lots of stuff with it. Uh, you have lawyers who join. It's still a corporate, but it's different types. So like a media house, like a Times of India, right? A very different type of job there. Then you have lawyers who moved into doing MBA, right? So I think one of the things that a law school does for you is it gives you knowledge about how a system works, which is very powerful. It's very much like, I mean, the closest that comes is obviously medicine, right? So you have this coveted piece of knowledge which has to do with your rights, which has to do with your very existence in a democratic country or in a country, right? I think that's a very powerful piece of sort of thing to have. So, whatever you do after that, it gives you that sort of confidence that, oh, I know the law. So now, even if I do business, even if I do, hotel management or whatever, I know my boundaries. I know what I can cross, how to cross. So, there's a lot of, it's that extra piece of knowledge which is never not useful. I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, it's something very basic, right? Like uh simple thing like crossing the signal, right? I mean, is it actually a criminal offense, or is it just going to cause you a fine, or are you going to get arrested? These, but a lawyer will immediately tell you, and contracts are something everybody signs now. Documentation has become such a big part of everyday life. So it always, I think it, even in my days, there were a lot of people, like senior people, who would come to just study law as a piece of knowledge, right? Makes you more aware. So I think there's a lot that one can do. People have done law and psychology, which is an excellent combination. There's NLP, which is this neuro linguistic practice.
Correct.
A lot of people have done law and NLP to come up with what now is called counseling, but it's legal counseling, right? So you don't really practice, but you tell people what's the right way ahead. There's also mediation now, which is the more non-court going private practice. That's also now regularized. So there's a lot of opportunity if you want to stick to law. But even if you don't want to stick to it, this piece of knowledge doesn't really go waste, I feel.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Now, your own work sits at that very specific and fascinating intersection of law, anthropology, studying how communities actually resolve disputes and how policing works on the ground
Right.
in real life. And from that, you've built something called the intersection.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about that path and what the intersection actually is? Because I think it's a beautiful kind of example of where a law career can, truly take you. Yeah.
Yeah, so intersection was very organic. It started, so as a researcher, I've studied conflict and how people use the law. What is their understanding of law? How do they respond to it? How do they use it? And my space of study was conflict because that is where you see people suddenly speaking about the law. So I used to be placed in different forums. I continue to be where conflict resolution, so to speak, could happen. So it was either a courtroom or it was a police station or it was an NGO. It has been mediation offices. So wherever you see people coming with the hope that they will have even panchayats. I've spent a lot of time with panchayats. And what started happening was I used to be there over an extended period of time, because when you do an ethnographic study, which is what comes from anthropology, you spend a lot of time in that space. So it could be 6 months, 8 months, 18 months. So people see you there and they start wondering who you are, what are you doing here? And because I was a lawyer and I was studying conflict, there was a very quick connection. Because you don't get lawyers sitting in police stations all the time. And so I became sort of this person who people would reach out to say, "Oh, I have this problem. What do you think these guys are going to do?" Before entering the chowki, they would ask me this. Or before coming to an NGO. As in when I say before, you're in the NGO, but before going to, let's say, the station master or the station house officer or the actual presiding officer, they would say, "Do you know what is happening here?" And for me, this was very interesting because I would get to hear their story, but B, I started realizing there was a need for them to just understand what is happening. Somebody had told them, "Idhar jao," so they were coming. But not all of them knew what is going to happen. Of course, there were the very smart ones who would tell me, "Arey, idhar aise hoga," which was also very cool. And this sort of spread word of mouth, that, "Oh, ask this woman whether you should go to a police station, or, what should you do, basically." And so I started Intersection formally in 2023 because it was a very overwhelming load of people who were calling. And I just wanted to give it a name. And I still do the same. Only what is interesting is that because I gave it a name suddenly. So earlier I used to work and I continue to work largely with marginalized section, economically vulnerable, socially vulnerable, and mostly women. But when I gave it a name, for some reason, I also started getting approached by women. It's largely women who were from higher social classes, let's put it like that. And I realized that this is a gap that exists across society. Like, they just need somebody to talk to who is not going to push them to go to court, but is still going to tell them about the law, is still going to help them think with, because I mean, after 15 years of doing, research and conflict, I feel everybody knows what they want. They just are figuring out how to get what they want. What is the best way to do it? And unfortunately, we have these, like, if you go to an NGO, they'll say, "Ha, you go like this," they'll take the right path. If you go to a lawyer, he'll try to frame everything in a legal way. If you go to a therapist, they're going to say, "Oh, it's psychological. Let's try to solve the psychological problem." Uh, but they miss that space where you are like, "Okay, this could be therapy. This could be a part of that. This part of your problem requires this. This part requires this." Um, what has the end product is a conflict, obviously. So to just unravel with them how they see it, I think that was the space that somehow I was organically filling. And so I continue to do that under this name. And yeah, it's
That's nice.
yeah.
It's good to know. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's good to know. There was, I mean, you've also done, and I don't know whether you still do, some amount of volunteering with Avni Kumau
Mhm.
in the hills of Uttarakhand. And can you tell us
Yes.
about what they do and what that experience kind of taught you? Are you firstly still doing some work over
Yes,
there
I
with
was
them?
just there last month.
Okay, amazing.
Yes.
And yeah, what is all that about? I would love to kind of
So
dive deep.
Avni's home, it's also my school. I always say that's my school. So I went to Avni when I was 21. It's been next year it'll be 20 years of association with them. And I went there again, like I said, on a whim. I wanted to be in rural India. I wanted to, like many people, I want to be in the mountains, and I wanted to write about communities that people had not visited. Solo traveling was not a thing then. I'm still too. I ended up there, and Rashmi and Rajneesh, who founded Avni, they are again very, very, very close mentors. I went there for 3 weeks actually because I wanted to go and teach in a school in Munsiari, which is further down. And my family was a bit worried. So they said, "Oh, no, no, wait, the school business sounds very erratic. You go to an NGO." So I ended up at Avni. And I said to Rashmi, "Oh, I don't want to be in an NGO. I want to be I want to be free." And she said, "Okay, you spend 3 weeks with us, and if it doesn't work out, we'll connect you with somebody in Munsiari." They've already been there for many years before. And ended up being there for 6 months. And I was a lawyer, and nobody wanted a lawyer there. Basically, they were like, "Oh, what is this education? Why do you need a lawyer? Lawyers are bad people. They're always causing disputes." And so my legal education was completely sort of sidetracked for the 6 months. But I did a lot. I worked a lot in the community. I went and lived in the community trying to do what Avni does, which is to set up income generation opportunities in the villages of the Kumau. So Avni has a craft program and an energy program, and since the last decade, we also have a school, a primary school. And I have over the years been involved in the school very actively, as well as in the livelihood program. So largely the idea was to take a local craft, which is natural dyeing and weaving, and to use that to create opportunities of income within the community, because this is something they know. So not to impose something new, but to work with what they know and to strengthen that. And that sits with a philosophy that I have used all my life, which is that even if I'm talking about the law, I'll say, what is it that you want? What is your strength? Let's navigate the law with what is your strength rather than saying you should do this. What is it that you want to do? So I think that ethos that Avni taught me has left me with for the rest of my life. And I did a lot of work, but mostly what impacted me the most was living in the community, talking to people, trying to see what matters to them, and not say, "Oh, this is right for you," or "This is wrong for you." It I did away with a dictionary of words: backward, rural, underdeveloped, vulnerable. All these are words I don't use at all, like unless I have to just make a very simple explanation. But these are not words that matter, because everybody is rich and powerful in their comfort zones. Yeah. So, Avni, yeah, and so over the years, I've done a lot of work with them, largely community outreach work. So when I'm there, I go into the villages, spend time, because that's what grassroots NGOs do. They basically, you build trust and empowerment through conversation. It's not every day that they meet a woman from across the world, across the country, talking about why she didn't have children or something like this, right? All of this is, yeah. And so that has taken me into conversations about contraception, about violence, about so many things where people, one thing leads to another and women will talk. And that's then my law degree starts mattering, because suddenly they will not ask me, but then they're very quietly things will come up and say, "Oh, but then is this right? Can I do it? Oh, my husband is married to another woman. Is it okay? Is it?" These stories come up, and that's where I started realizing, oh my god, like, it matters that I'm a lawyer. I wouldn't have known this answer if I was not a lawyer. um but to go and say, "Oh, I'm a lawyer and I'm here to help you," nobody accepts you like that.
Yeah, it gets a little intimidating maybe for
Yes.
them.
So I started using my education really to do basic things, and I continue to do them even today. I help fill bank forms. When I'm in the village, I help women get their names on their land rights mutation registers. I get kids to get their scholarships. So it's very basic stuff. But when I say I'm a lawyer and I'm standing in the panchayat house, then they will back off a bit and they'll say, "Okay, she knows what she's saying," and that they can't just take the lady for a ride. So
Sure.
I always say I'm putting my basic education to use, because that's what law school taught you, right? Like, how does a panchayat work? You can go to the ZP if the gram panchayat doesn't work. So for a common person, this is magic, right? If you know that you can. And I come across the weirdest of situations where this person has not had a death certificate because of some bizarre reason, and I'm like, what's stopping that person? And then when you go and ask that person, he doesn't have an answer, right? The official. He's like, "Oh, because I could not give it to her, I didn't give it to her," type of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think my law education started mattering much more around, but it needed trust building. It needed me to spend time. And now I work also on understanding their justice systems. I've done a lot of work on trying to understand indigenous justice systems of the mountains, They have a lot of rituals around justice that I write about, I study. They have a lot of faith in nature and natural surroundings, which has to do with ideas of regulation, order, justice, which is sort of my research work now.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's, also
Yeah,
what you
that's
studied in England, like the
yes,
culture and,
yes, yes, yes.
understanding
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
That's amazing. Kalindi, this has just opened up careers and more careers for people to kind of look at with law. But more importantly, I think for, the younger audience or for someone who is genuinely considering law, considering studying law, let's just say that.
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of person genuinely thrives in this field? Not just kind of survives, but, genuinely thrives in this field.
I think somebody who likes to read, that would be the first
Sure.
thing I would put there. I think you need to be okay with yourself. Like you need to be okay with loneliness. Because a lot of time is spent on your own, reading, trying to figure things out. So that's professionally. Third, I will always say somebody who has a very strong mental health setup. Because if you pick something like family law or criminal law, which is where the need is the most, it's very, very draining emotionally. You get very emotionally drained, you get very stressed out. Every day is, I mean, also for, of course, other lawyers. I think if you're a counsel in a high court or something, you're back to back cases, you're all the time on your feet. So I think you need to be a very mentally strong person. You need to know that this is work, or even if you're emotionally invested, you need to be okay, because otherwise it can end you up very frustrated, because the system is not easy. It's not an easy system. And you have to do things many times that don't sit with your ethics, don't sit with your principles, but you should be able to laugh it away and say, oh, aisa ho gaya, ha ha ha. Whatever, I mean. But I think that's really very important. So I think this is, of course, if you want to be a lawyer and practice law, but if you want to pursue justice and do things for society, then I think you need to be a people's person. That's one. It's a complete opposite. You need to be okay with meeting people, talking to people from all types of backgrounds. You also need to have strong mental health there, because I think that's a very difficult path. All the time you're just fighting with the system, with people. You're just trying to explain things to them that they don't want to hear, that they are resistant to. Yeah, it's not easy to be a woman in this field. I can assure you that.
Yeah. No, that's
It is
important to share.
not
Thank you.
easy.
Yeah.
But I think we need a lot of, as a woman, I think law does a lot to your personality. It makes you stronger, it makes you confident, it gives you power to take on the world. And I think that's true irrespective. I mean, you just need a law school for that. Because it does something to women. I don't know. I mean, because of the nature of our society, which is always, trying to keep women protected or out of the public sphere, it does something to women. So I think that they discover within themselves. I think it does much more for us as just therapy.
Yeah.
Makes us stronger. It makes us bolder. So even if you don't end up doing law and you just do a law degree, it'll change you in a way that's for the better.
Yeah, that's important because a lot of people who come to me have finished their law degree and they're from smaller towns
Yeah.
and they'll say अभी नहीं करना है मुझे lawyer नहीं बनाना है. I don't want to
Huh.
become a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's this constant stranded moment because the family is literally looking at them and saying, you now don't want to become a lawyer. What do you have to do in that
Yeah.
case,
Yeah.
So this definitely what you shared, I think it'll impact them and, it's good for them to know. So thank you for that. Can there any resources or communities or starting points that, you would point youngsters or someone who wants to get to explore the less conventional side of law, like you spoke about think tanks and,
Yeah.
this law and tech kind of space,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anything that
So there are, so NGOs are a great place to start to know about the law. It's a very specific type of law, obviously, but it's a good space because it's less formal. So even if you're not a lawyer, you can be in that space and still find something to understand. And these are spaces that need people. So I'm always sort of pushing in that direction. But also newspaper offices, these are great places to know about, know whether you want to study the law or not. Think tanks are good, but think tanks are very evolved. So I don't know if young people are doing very much in think tanks. It's hard, right? Unless you are already a writer or already publishing things. But I think in NGOs, newspaper offices are two places that will give you an exposure to law without really having to study it. And that also helps you decide whether you want to do something like this or not.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts or a message that you'd like to leave with our audience, Kalindi?
Well, I just feel that I'll always say that work, because I think a working space is your biggest school. And whatever you formally educate yourself in is a bonus. But you can, you can work, you can read, and it'll only strengthen what you study, because I don't think our education systems are still, or have ever been for that reason, fully, or sustain, like they're not wholesome in themselves. They give you one part of what is required for you to become somebody, but you need that other part, which is society, which is, community, which is family. And that comes together in this working space, which then I think is very, very important to get ahead in what you're doing with formal education. So the earlier you start working, the nicer it is, because it really gives you clarity about why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Kind of humbles you also, because you
Yeah,
start
it does. It
realizing.
does. Absolutely. And it's irrespective of profession, right? You can just, our older generation actually did work while they were studying, right? Like our grandparents, they did a
Yes.
BCom, but they were still farming, but they were still, education. So I leave you with this, for example, is I was in a fisherman's community for a long time. And the three sons, the two sons were already fishermen, and the third son decided to study engineering, which was very unusual in this village. Like he was one of the few 3-4 people who decided to study ahead of 7th standard. And every time I speak to his mother, she's like, I don't know when this boy is going to come back. And I was like, but why do you become an engineer? He's going to earn lots of money. This is all a hobby. He has to come back and do real work. And what is real work? This, like having a family, living in the village, running your father's fishing business.
Yeah, fishing was the.
Yeah, also like being part of the panchayat, like, basically being in the community and doing whatever it takes to live that real life. And for her, she's like, oh, education is just a bubble. It's keeping him away from real life. Which was a very, very interesting insight, that she said this is also education. It's true, because the kids are counting numbers faster than anybody, because they're trading since they're 11, right? Selling fish and whatever. So it was interesting. I was like, yeah, it is. I think if we don't want it to become a hobby, you have to work.
No, that's such a lovely share. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Kalindi, for that.
Thank
Now,
you, Naglita.
where can people follow your work or reach out? I'm going to kind of include the intersection
That's fine.
link
That's fine. Yeah.
below.
I'll give you a link to the intersection.
Okay. I will share that in the description below.
Yes.
And
yes.
if
And
anybody
my
wants
email
to.
ID is one can always write to me on email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you so much. It's
experience
been a
and
pleasure.
your journey with us today. I'm sure this will kind of inspire our audience. And to our viewers, we hope you found this conversation insightful. Stay tuned for more episodes of Discover You Career Journeys, where we aim to inspire you. Thank you. At the end of each career journey, we bring you the key learnings from our conversations with our guests. From our conversation with Dr. Kalindi Kokal, here's what stayed with us. Law is not about arguing well. It's about reading deeply, researching thoroughly, and being okay with sitting in discomfort. often for a very long time. And the degree itself, it gives you useful knowledge no matter where your career takes you. Even if you never step into a courtroom, understanding how a system works is never wasted. If you're ambitious and driven, the institution you graduate from matters far less than most people think. It's what you do with your time that determines how far you go. The courtroom, however, can be deeply disillusioning. The system is slow, imperfect, and often unfair. You need real grit to show up for it every single day. Law doesn't have to mean litigation. Think tanks, tech, media, policy. A law degree opens far more doors than most students are told about when they're starting out. And if you do want to thrive in this field, not just survive it, Kalandi says you need 3 things: a genuine love for reading, a comfort with solitude, and strong mental health. Perhaps the most human lesson from her journey: people will not accept your legal help until they first accept you as a person. Trust comes before everything else. And finally, work is your biggest school. Formal education gives you one part of what you need: real experience, community, and society. Complete it. Thank you for watching this inspiring conversation on Discover You Career Journeys. If you've enjoyed this chat, hit the like button and let me know in the comment section which part of today's story inspired you most. And if you have questions about your own career or want to hear from people in a specific industry, drop those suggestions below as well. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new career journey. It may just be the inspiration you were looking for. Until next time, stay happy.